Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah Batchelor, and I'm a graduate student in the Environmental Studies Department, Cal State Fullerton, and I'm also an Arboretum volunteer. I'd like to welcome you all to Earth Day from the Fullerton Arboretum, celebrating Titan student achievement and research. We will begin this event with the scholarship recipients for 2021, presented by John Carroll from the Friends of the Fullerton Arboretum.
Happy Earth Day, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. It's my pleasure to start off this celebration on a high note by giving away some money. Woohoo! The Fullerton Arboretum and the Friends of the Fullerton Arboretum support student success, and you're going to hear about many of those activities today. One way that we support students is through two scholarships. The David L. Walkington Memorial Scholarship. This award was established to honor the memory of David L. Walkington, who was a professor of biology at Cal State Fullerton and also a director of the Fullerton Arboretum. This scholarship is open to students majoring in biological science or related fields that emphasize botany, ethnobotany, medical plant usage, biogeography, and related fields. This year's winner of the David L. Walkington Memorial Scholarship is Nicholas Torres. Nicholas is featured here on this slide. His work is in plant biology. He's a member of the SERP Scholar Program working with Dr. Abraham. And Nicholas hopes to be a biology teacher someday. So while we're supporting the current generation of college biology scholars with this scholarship, Nicholas is going to be cultivating the next group when he becomes a teacher. The other scholarship that we support is the Joris Mag Local History Scholarship. This scholarship was established to encourage the study of California local history. It's open to full-time upper division and graduate students pursuing topics related to California history, and preferences given to local history here in Southern California, and maybe even specifically things related to Orange County and the Arboretum. This year's winner of the Joris Mag Local History Scholarship is Lila Rodriguez. Please join me in congratulating these students. Oh, by the way, each one of these scholarships comes with a check for $1,500. Ordinarily, we would be handing them the check and congratulating them, but such as it is, we promise, the checks are in the mail. Please join me in congratulating these students.
Thank you so much, John, and congratulations to those students. Now we will hear from the head of EIP on campus.
Greetings and welcome, if only virtually, to the Arboretum here at California State University, Fullerton. My name is Chris Swart. I serve as Associate Vice President of Extension and International Programs, and we have the pleasure and honor of administering the Fullerton Arboretum on behalf of the university. The Arboretum is what we like to consider a living laboratory. And out here today on Earth Day, as we jointly celebrate what our planet and future means for us all, we thought it would be instructive to visit what we call the farm, right here behind me, understand just one example of not only the high impact practices we support, but the ongoing research that's supported by our faculty, staff, and students that make the Arboretum not just that living laboratory that we mentioned, but also a service center for the community we serve. Now, this Arboretum and the farm of which it is a part has been the recipient of many resources from our community as well as from state and federal agencies. And the farm in particular has received numerous USDA and NIFA grants that have allowed these students that you see out here today behind me, as well as the faculty, continue to support integral research activities that not only allow our students to understand what it means to be a part of the earth and the humanity of which we are all a part, but allows us, as you can kind of see here with some signs, to support community endeavors as well. Many of the resources that the farm itself produces, vegetables, fruits, and so forth, are offered up to community members as well as to local businesses that have significant social impact. And it would be nearly impossible without the support from these state and federal agencies for that work to continue. But more importantly, we also need your support as we continue to maintain this living laboratory, not just for our faculty, staff, and students, but for everyone out there, and also for this earth that we're celebrating jointly today. So thank you so much for joining us here at California State University, but in particular the Fullerton Arboretum, what we like to think of as Orange County, Southern California, and the world's living laboratory. Thank you so much. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Chris, for everything that this garden is doing. Now we will be looking at a student project presented by students of Cal State Fullerton in which they're designing a mobile seed planting station.
Hello and welcome to our presentation. I will start our presentation by introducing my team members, Jensen, Wang, Fat, and myself, Khalid. Now we're going to move on to our problem description. So our goal was to provide interactive education at the children's garden of the CSUF Arboretum, an area with no connection to the power grid. The device is intended for children aged between 3 and 12. The current design is a mobile seed planting station that will be operated by a volunteer at the Arboretum. We have purchased the parts of the alpha prototype, but we have not yet assembled it.
Currently, many children don't spend much time in the Arboretum because there's not much to do in the Arboretum. We hope that this project will provide something for them to do and hopefully get them more interested in nature and conservation more specifically, which is especially important given the environmental problems that the Earth faces today.
So here's our original design from last semester. As you can see on the middle left is the seed planter, on the middle right is the cart, and the pot maker is on the right. However, as we talked to the professor and also the Arboretum staff, we have changed our mind to some new designs. The reason of overturning the old design are safety concerns, ease of maintenance, and the cost.
Okay, so for this design, we will need 4 pair of the pot maker, which is you can see on the left side on the top corner. And then we're gonna need 2 of the dispenser that we can store the seeds so that after making the pot, kids can get the seed by themselves. And then we need a soil container, and then another container to store a recycled paper and the other tools that are going to be provided from Cal State Fullerton. And the main card that we're going to purchase directly from the manufacturer. Next, please. How we're going to assembly and mount it into the card? As you can see on the top, for the pot maker, we're going to attach that with the chains to the card, each corner. So the reason is to prevent it from losing. And the second reason is that if they want to launch the design in this year during the pandemic, so they can still keep the kids stay apart, social distancing. And for the seed dispenser, we're gonna screw the hole, drill the hole on the cart so that we can use the fastener to mount the dispenser onto the cart. And for the container, we need 2 of those. We're not gonna mount it onto the cart, we just place it on the top. So for kids can easily to get soil and easier for the Cal State Fullerton Arboretum staff to refill the soil after a week.
So the dispensers on the middle and left are operated simply by turning the knob at the front, which will dispense the seeds that you need. And the pot maker on the right works by putting paper into the bottom part like a mold and then pressing down with the catchable top part.
Speaking of how this project inspires me, the project provides me with an opportunity to apply what I've learned at school to real life. The knowledge from the book is always rigid, and the time I finally have the opportunity to create value from the knowledge I have learned. Also, the experience gave me a clear understanding of my future career. And thank you.
Thank you so much for those students and their presentation and the invention that they created. We'll now be hearing from Professor Lawrence T. Yoon about student watercolor exhibitions. Those were such beautiful watercolor paintings. And now, speaking of art, we will hear a poetry reading by Joel Bush, the student winner of the poetry contest.
Student here at the English department at Cal State Fullerton, and my poem is entitled The Study of Life. So my inspiration for this poem comes from the Cal State Fullerton Arboretum and the campus at large. I grew up in Illinois, where there isn't nearly as much kind of diversity of foliage, of topography. It's a landlocked state. And so I really do appreciate everything about Southern California's beauty, everything that it has to offer with nature. What I appreciate most of all is the constant sunlight, because where I used to live, you don't really see the sun for about 3 months out of the year. That can have a large psychological effect on a lot of people. So this poem that I'm about to read is really about the appreciation for sunlight, the effects that it has on both nature and on the human brain. So without further ado, here's my poem, The Study of Life. The professor points her laser at the diagram of a cell. It looks like a purple tennis ball split open. She waves her arms in wide circles and makes quick slashes in the air. Her voice goes up and down like a rickety seesaw. She always tries to make it interesting by saying that biology is the study of life. I need to get out of this bomb shelter and feel the sun on Sarah's hands again. I surveyed the room with its white walls and dingy desks. Kaylee's surfing the Sephora sale on her Aces. Brian's hoping his mom and dad will love him a little more if he can pull out a B on the final. Brittany's still pissed her financial aid hasn't come through. It'll be another long week of apples, cereal, and canned beans. We finally escape, stumbling up into the bright California afternoon. A Danaeus plexippus flutters by my shoulder. I make my way across the silica, alumina, and lime and sit next to Sarah. She nestles her cranium on my sternum. I wonder how much that textbook can really tell me about life. Thank you very much and have a happy Earth Day.
And thank you, Joel. Now for a message from our Arboretum Director, Greg Diamond.
Hi, I'm Greg Diamond, the director here at Fullerton Arboretum. Every year for the past several years, in the spring, we have celebrated the work that our students and our researchers have done here from Cal State Fullerton out here in the Arboretum, one of the university's great outdoor labs. We look at the work, the research that our students have conducted to help advance them through their academic career to get their degrees. And some of the work is pretty exciting, very interesting, and I always find it informative. I hope that you join us today and you learn something new about the Arboretum and how the Arboretum is used by Cal State Fullerton and the departments, the many departments that work here at the university. So that I'm glad that you joined us today. This will be a fun lunch hour, and sit back and let's have some fun. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Now for our second student project presentation, we will hear from Clark Silva, the creator of the 40th anniversary exhibition of the Fullerton Arboretum.
Hello, everybody. My name is Clark Silva, and I am a art history and museum studies grad student at Cal State Fullerton. My project with the Arboretum was for the 40th anniversary exhibition of the Arboretum, which was in 2019. I came to this project through working at the library on campus. I was a student assistant for the exhibits program there. And then in the summer of 2019, this opportunity came up where our coordinator, Trish Campbell, partnered with the Harriet and the folks at the Arboretum to put on this 40th anniversary exhibition there at the Heritage Museum on the Arboretum's campus. They had, Trish and the coordinators had divided up the exhibition space into these different sections that covered all the different sort of parts of the history of the Arboretum, from like planning, development, getting the funds together and the community involvement and all that stuff. And then they let us choose which sections we wanted to curate as student curators. My two sections were Heritage House, which was a little bit about Dr. Clark and the kind of history of his house in Fullerton, and then the move and restoration of the house from where it was in Fullerton to the Arboretum grounds, and kind of that whole process of getting it there and saving the house. And the other section was on creating the plan, which was on the kind of concept art development of the land for the Arboretum. So it was a lot of schematics and concept designs. what each of the students did is we were let into kind of the archives of the Arboretum, and we did our research. We wrote all of the text panels and labels, chose the objects, and designed how those objects were displayed in our little sections. So the Arboretum was very accommodating to us, especially for me, being able to go through like their map room and looking through all of the plans and designs that were being developed for the Arboretum and throughout the years as well. So not just the plans in like the late 70s, but also like when redevelopment was happening in the 90s and so forth. And then being able to go through Heritage House and find objects to go on display was really fun for me. And this project, it was really great to be able to actually turn theory into practice. We learn a lot about like curating, research, writing, exhibition design in classes, but there's not always a lot of opportunity to do that in person, physically. And so being able to actually like work on an exhibition and learn like painting and how to hang things, how to make the different sizes of text panels and fonts and all that stuff, to be able to work on that like in person was a really fantastic experience to do that in the real world, and to have a reception and to open it to the public instead of just keeping everything in the theory. So this is one of, in my career here as a postgrad, this is probably one of my most favorite things I was able to get to do. Just because it was so, being able to step out of the classroom and to put theory into practice was a wonderful experience for me. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Clark. That was an incredible exhibition. And now we look forward to hearing more about what happens on site at the Heritage House from Professor Kasem, who is presenting student research on the first black widow spider bite found in Fullerton.
I'm Dr. Mary Lynn Kasem. I'm a professor in the Department of Biological Science, and I'm here today to share with you a project that I worked on with two undergraduate biology majors, Sharon Chang and Amnia Abdul Maqsood. This is a story that shows the intersection between biology and local history. And as with any good story, it has a cast of characters. The first character in this story is George Schertz. In 1900, George had traveled from his home in Los Angeles to supervise the construction of the first Masonic temple in Fullerton. The second character is George C. Clark. Dr. Clark played a central role in Fullerton's incorporation as a city, served on the first city council in 1904, and played an important part in establishing the Fullerton General Hospital in 1913. The building that served as Dr. Clark's home and medical office is listed on the National Register of Historic Places and serves as the centerpiece of the Fullerton Arboretum. The final character in this story is a spider, specifically a black widow spider, or Latrodectus hesperus. Black widow spiders are easily identified by the red hourglass found on their abdomens. They build messy cobwebs in areas where they can capture insects and are often found around wood piles, fences, and other man-made structures. Black widow spiders are notorious because, unlike other local spiders, their venom is toxic to humans. The toxicity of their venom results from a protein, alpha-lactotoxin, that can interact with human cells. In particular, alpha-lactotoxin can affect nerve cells, resulting in miscommunication between nerve and muscle cells. A publication in 1901 provides the details of the story. And here's the timeline. July 26, 1900. George uses the outhouse at the construction site and is bitten by a spider. He is in pain. He suffers muscle spasms and becomes very agitated. Dr. Clark is called to care for him. At the time, it's reported that George was convinced that he was dying and asked that his wife and daughter be summoned. However, his coworkers believed he was overreacting and did not honor his request. Dr. Clark, following medical practices of the time, administered topical analgesics followed by intravenous injections of morphine and atropine to treat the pain and to provide sedation. The sedation was necessary because, as he describes, George would be in a chair, then on a bed, then on the floor, and so on, over and over. Eventually, George's symptoms seemed to subside, and Dr. Clark left to care for another patient. Short time later, Dr. Clark was urgently recalled to George's bedside. It was reported to the doctor that shortly after falling asleep, George had turned black all over. Dr. Clark observed that George was much cyanosed, and his breathing was labored, and he was unable to swallow. Further treatments seemed to have a positive effect, but eventually George develops a high fever, and his breathing becomes erratic. And at 3 a.m. the next day, 14 hours after the spider bite, George dies. Reports in the newspaper attribute George's death to blood poisoning. Let's look again at the timeline leading to George's death. Dr. Clark treats George for pain and agitation following common medical practices of the day. George self-medicates by consuming multiple 6-ounce glasses of whiskey. And when George's breathing became irregular, Dr. Clark, possibly as a last-ditch effort, injected a stimulant, strychnine, in combination with whiskey in hopes of reviving him. Unfortunately, George did die. So what was the real cause of George Shirt's death? Alpha-lactotoxin was certainly responsible for the pain and muscle spasms that George suffered. However, it's rare for people to die from a black widow spider bite. We know that alcohol consumption affects the nervous system and can depress breathing. The combination of morphine and atropine was a common treatment for pain and agitation in the 1900s. However, both compounds can slow breathing and would ultimately lead to cyanosis, as was observed in this case. Strychnine is a lethal poison, but it was used in the late 1800s and early 1900s as a treatment to stimulate muscle contraction. It's possible the combination of strychnine and whiskey injected may have done more harm than good. The question remains, what was the source of fever? We typically associate fever with an infection of some sort. Did the spider bite transmit more than just alpha-lactotoxin? Or was there some effect, the combination of the bite and the treatments leading, leading to sepsis, which could ultimately cause organ failure and death? Sadly, we will never know, but it makes for an interesting story, and I thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much. That was so interesting, and who would have thought that just one spider could cause so much research in Fullerton? And next, we'll be looking at my student project that I completed in spring of 2020 about the 50th anniversary of the EPA signing and Earth Day.
Hi everyone, my name is Hannah Batchelor and I am the curator of the exhibit in the Fullerton Arboretum's Nature Center titled 50 Years of Environmentalism.
I first started volunteering at the Arboretum in late 2019, and I soon found out that they were planning on creating an exhibit celebrating both the 50th anniversary of the signing of the EPA and of the first Earth Day. Before I began making the displays themselves, a really big part of my internship was renovating the interior of the Nature Center. The Nature Center previously centered mainly on the Arboretum itself and its various wildlife and plants. However, as the Arboretum moves forward as a symbol of environmental protection, it was important to have a place that recognized this and recognized the Arboretum's greater role in sustainability and advocacy within Southern California. Here are some progress photos from while I was in the middle of the cleaning phase preparing this area for the upcoming exhibit. So these display cases will hold various text and images and some interactive things that will outline the important environmental events of the past 50 years. And we are incredibly fortunate to have two great archives very close to the Arboretum. One of them is the Nixon Library, and the archivist there, Carla Braswell, was incredibly helpful and compiled a ton of information for my research so that I could provide accurate and interesting information about these topics. And then also Patricia Prestoneri from the Pollack Library on campus also helped me look in the archives for historical information from the Arboretum itself. So these display cases, using the information I compiled from various resources, including these two incredible libraries, we will learn about the impact of Apollo 8's Earthrise photo, the Santa Barbara oil spill, and the subsequent Get Oil Out campaign, as well as the history of LA smog. This slide is to thank the volunteers who put in the wonderful floor. You can see the difference from the first and the last photo, and then also those who painted the walls, which you can kind of see in the middle photo. Unfortunately, I don't have better images, but thank you so much, and it looks incredible. Here's the interactive website that I created for the exhibit. So all you need to do is go to the link at the bottom, click on any decade, and you'll be able to find out a ton of information about environmental history. There's some important points, some environmental disasters, and a lot of successes. It's really interesting, and I hope you can check it out. Another really cool thing we were able to do during my internship was make the transition from plastic water bottles to reusable aluminum water bottles, which are seen in this photo. This is really exciting because plastic is incredibly harmful to the environment, and these aluminum water bottles will help reduce waste not only in the park, but on our planet in general. Aluminum also can be recycled infinitely, and not only that, but also Yellowstone National Park sells these same water bottles, and so it's just a really cool connection to have with such a beautiful and amazing place that's also really important for environmental history. I'm really so honored to have had this internship with the Arboretum. It was really cool to find out ways to take the concepts that I learned in the classroom during my studies in environmental science and then make them more accessible and fun and still educational. But it was really great coming up with ideas and then making them happen. I had so much fun making the various displays, the activities, and the interactive website. It was just a really cool opportunity, and I really enjoyed showing the Arboretum as a center of environmental advocacy and a symbol of sustainability. My internship with the Fullerton Arboretum continued to fuel my passion for both environmental protection and habitat restoration and conservation. I'm so excited to have had this internship and gain the skills and knowledge that I did. Working in such a beautiful place with people that shared my vision for the future and environmental protection reminded me why I chose to work in the environmental sector.
And I really am so excited to be here and so excited to be sharing my project with all of you. So thank you very much.
And next we'll be hearing from our Living Collections curator, Greg Pongetti.
Hi, I'm Greg Pongetti. I'm the curator here at the Arboretum. And today I wanted to talk about the theme of Earth Day. The theme of this year's Earth Day is Restore Our Earth. And here at the Arboretum, that is something that we do. I think the prime example of that theme is the Arboretum itself. We grow, it's a huge number of plants that we grow here. It's a 26-acre piece of land that is a sanctuary for all different types of plants, pollinators, lots of birds, and many other creatures that come and go. We grow a number of native plants, which I am surrounded by here on this beautiful spring day. Many of the native plants that we grow are rare or threatened, as well as many of the other plants from all around the world. We also propagate these plants and sell them at our native sale and many other sales throughout the year. And so those plants go out and are planted in people's yards, so we're kind of restoring natural habitats 1 yard at a time all throughout the community. We have a lot of other sustainable practices, such as our mulching and composting programs, which recycle all of these plant materials back into the earth and into the land that we grow these plants on. So restoring our earth is something that we try to do here every day, and we aim to be the best stewards of this land that we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Up next, we're going to look at a poster presentation by Kaylin McLaughlin.
Greetings. My name is Kaylin McLaughlin, and I'm a second-year graduate student at CSU Fullerton, obtaining my MA in Evolutionary Anthropology. As part of UACRE, I conduct research at the Fullerton Arboretum Apiary, where I have been collecting data on the European honeybees for the last 2 years. Since I began working at the apiary and participated in beekeeping classes with the Arboretum personnel and other students, I noticed some issues were arising with our colonies. We were losing them at a high rate. This got me thinking of the challenges that honeybees are facing and the reasons behind such high rates of losses being reported worldwide. The common denominator? Varroa mites. These ectoparasites attach to the bodies of pupa and adult bees, feed on their fat bodies, and hemolymph. Varroa mites are also vectors for many diseases, like deformed wing virus, that further put the colony in a more precarious situation. I wanted to know more about this relationship. What are the factors that contribute to high varroa mite infestations? Do honeybees have their own methods of ridding themselves of these pests? My intention for this research was to accomplish it with minimal invasiveness and collect real-time data in an apiary and not in a laboratory setting. We perform weekly hive inspections collecting data that informs us on the overall health of each colony and the apiary. We collect the live varroa mite counts on a sample of bees to better estimate the infestation levels and take videos of honeybee grooming activity. To further understand the efficiency of grooming activities, varroa mite sticky traps are placed in the hives to determine how many mites are being removed, possibly through bee grooming, in each hive on a weekly basis. We also collect weekly weather data focusing on the changes in relative humidity, temperature, and wind speed. I found that increases in relative humidity increase the probability of observing allo-grooming behavior. Additionally, as the total proportion of time spent grooming increases, the number of varroa mites decreases. Research in recent years has reported varroa destructor and other environmental stressors may be the foremost reasons for the increased losses of honeybees. This research leads towards a more comprehensive understanding of adaptive honeybee behaviors that may attenuate varroa mite populations and the significant role environmental factors such as humidity play in the process. Through this research over the last 2 years, I have worked closely with Arboretum Curator Greg Pongetti and lead horticulturalist Emmanuel Romo. Working with them and establishing this research has given us a greater appreciation for honeybees and their importance to our ecosystem. I hope to continue working within the specialized niche of combining agroecology principles with anthropological theory to promote a more resilient agricultural system.
Thanks, Kaylin, for that presentation. Up next, we have Joseph Michaud, who will be presenting on positive pressure in the trunks of avocado trees.
Hi everyone, I'm Joseph Michaud and I am a current graduate student, TA, research associate, and part-time laboratory manager with Dr. Shank's Plants and H2O Laboratory. And I wanted to present some of our more recent interesting findings with the water transport of Fuerte avocado in the Fullerton Arboretum. A little bit of background before jumping into our findings. Normally, water is transported under negative pressure in the stems during the day. Water is pulled upwards through the stems due to the evaporation of water from the leaves of the plant, effectively pulling on the water molecules up from the roots during the day. This type of system, though, is prone to embolism, where air can enter into these vessels, effectively preventing the movement of water within a plant and can become a really major issue. However, some plants also exhibit what is known as positive pressure in their stems. This pressure is often referred to as root pressure and is assumed to be able to refill vessels that have become embolized and cannot transport water. However, the mechanism creating this pressure is unknown, and there is very limited evidence of actual vessel refilling occurring within these plants. So this is a very understudied phenomenon and is not well understood. How extensive is positive pressure within plant species? Well, you can find nightly pressure in all grass species, so major crops including wheat, maize, rice, also vines, woody species, and bamboo. However, this has never been observed before in avocado species. So this kind of brings us to our study of Fullerton avocado in the Fullerton Arboretum. Using a variety of advanced sensors and loggers throughout 2019 and the start of 2020, we were able to track the water status of these trees. The sensor we used to measure positive pressure is shown in the bottom left image here, in addition to some of the undergrads that were involved with this experiment. So, interestingly, after installing these sensors into the stem of Fullerton avocado, we found huge diurnal pressure measurements, which reached upwards of 400 kilopascals, the equivalent of 60 psi. That is a lot of pressure that's built up within these stems. During the day, we would see these values drop to 0, as shown here, since water is being pulled up through the stems under negative pressure. But however, at night, we see the pressure dramatically increase. This was very cool to see, and we weren't expecting to see any sort of positive pressure occurring within these plants. We also measured a variety of different parameters during this study. These include CO2, O2, stem diameter, stem sap flow, in addition to a couple other parameters, which kind of just gave us more insight into the water status of these trees over the day, which I included because I thought it would be interesting to show, though there's not enough time to cover everything that's going on here. A very similar study using these same sensors installed into a different species, laurel sumac in the Fullerton Arboretum, found no evidence of positive pressure in their stems, which suggests that these pressure sensors are indeed measuring positive pressure within avocado stems, and it's not just some strange artifact of the method that we are using. We have also been using these sensors to successfully measure positive pressure in bamboo stems, which are of ongoing study. So in conclusion of this short little presentation, some plant species are capable of producing huge amounts of positive xylem pressure, whose role and significance remains largely unknown. Our novel methodology of measuring this pressure at the Fullerton Arboretum appears to be effective in many woody angiosperms, with potential for the use of measuring water status in many plant species. Hopefully you found these findings interesting, and thank you.
Thank you, Joseph, and thank you again to all of our incredible student and faculty presenters. We will now be opening up our Q&A portion for anyone who has any questions. There's a Q&A button at the bottom where you can ask, or you can just unmute and ask anyone what you'd like to know. And if all of our panelists could turn on our videos so that everyone can see our faces and we can get started. I have a question for Clark, which is, what was the most difficult part of creating your exhibit?
Thank you for that question. Exhibitions are always, the hardest part is really kind of planning. I know for us, it was a lot of time was spent on just how, like, what's the story to tell when you have something that's like an anniversary exhibition? What's the narrative that you want to tell? And then once you come to like thinking about that, how you break that down, we had to break 40 years into kind of like small stories. And then we divided that amongst the other students. So that was probably the most difficult because everything after that kind of falls into place, like research, design and stuff, but coming up with that original concept and plan is always the hardest.
Thank you, Clark. We have a question from Maureen, which is to all of the panelists, and it is, how have these students made up for the lack of access to the Arboretum during this past year, and are they able to work in the Arboretum now?
I guess I could answer that. So luckily for me, I've gotten special permission to be out on the farm as part of U Acres. So me and some of the students seen in Chris's video earlier are the ones who work on the farm in apiary. So fortunately for us, we've been able to continue our research studies and manage those areas while the shutdown has been happening.
Thank you, Kaylin. We have a question for Joseph about, do fruit trees cycle water pressure at nighttime too?
Well, I've been looking around at a variety of different species. It's actually one of our ongoing projects to kind of try to identify what species exhibit this type of positive pressure trend. So I can't quite tell you specifically, like right off the top of my head, what species do exhibit positive pressure. But it is well known within like different herbaceous species. Woody fruit trees aren't so much known for it, but then there's not a lot of study into it. So it's one of those things that you kind of have to do a little bit more research into to kind of figure out type deal.
Thank you, Joseph. We also have, for anyone who'd like to answer, how many students are involved with the Arboretum and are classes held there? So classes aren't held there currently, but we can talk about how many of us are currently involved with the Arboretum. I can answer this one. So there are some opportunities for volunteering. I personally am not able to do any of them, but I'm so excited for when we are able to return and work in those areas again. For Joseph again, how does the research you've done translate to the backyard gardener and plant care?
So kind of one of the big goals behind what we've been doing, at least like my master's thesis with these positive pressure sensors, is kind of what we're hoping is that you could use such a sensor to detect the water status of plants. So kind of tell if either your plants are stressed or maybe if they are well watered, try to determine what is going on within those plants. Can't quite tell you at this point, just because it's still ongoing and I have not done nearly enough like studies to figure that out to this point. But that's kind of like one of the goals behind it, on top of a couple other like just physiology type questions.
Thank you. Kaylin, we have another question for you. What is it that drew you to your research, and how would you like to, if you could expand it maybe, or work on it more?
Thank you for that question. So I actually have a background in zoology, and then started at at CSU Fullerton to get my anthropology degree. And I thought it would be interesting to blend both of those scientific methodologies and then social science methodologies. So a lot of my thesis and my defense have all been circulating around creating methods that we can best use to help honeybees in their natural environments. And currently we're actually working on putting internal sensors into our hives. As well, we're waiting new nucleuses to arrive of new bees that we can do some more research on this summer.
Thank you. We can do a couple more questions if that works for everyone. Can everyone say what their favorite area of the Arboretum is?
I'll go first. I always love the sound of like running water. So the waterfall right at the opening of the Arboretum, and then that stream that goes through. It's always super tranquil for me.
For me, I guess I'm a little biased since I work at the farm in the apiary, which is in the back section. So I would have to say those are my most favorite because I get to see when we plant our lettuces or our tomato plants, I get to see how they grow throughout the time period. And I get to see how our bee colonies grow. So
I agree with Clark. I kind of like that area over by the streams and by the pines. If not that, I kind of do like the desert area where you have a lot of Insilia. That area is really cool.
I really love when all the daffodils are blooming and there's the meadow and there's all the wildflowers, and it's really exciting. And I'm glad that thanks to our Instagram, we've been able to sort of live vicariously through the people who are still able to work at the Arboretum. We have another question about the mobile seed planting station, about how children interact with it. Unfortunately, I don't believe that those students are on the panel today, but so unfortunately we don't know that one. Okay, so this last question is, how do we support the Fullerton Arboretum so it can open back up again? The best way to do that is through donations and providing support through our sales, and just giving us the support that we need to be able to return to the Arboretum. And with that, we will now be closing out our Q&A session. Thank you again to everyone who presented, everyone who asked questions, and everyone who's attending. And you've all made this such an incredible Earth Day celebration. I will now hand this off to John Carroll again.
Wow. Well, the Arboretum is such a special place in our community, and to many of us, it has so many personal connections and memories and so forth. We recently lost a dear friend, Dr. Jack Bedell. Jack was a member of the board of the Friends of the Fullerton Arboretum, and if you wish to honor his memory, his family asks that you consider making a donation to the Fullerton Arboretum. In fact, if you'd like to celebrate Jack's life or support one of the scholarships that we support, or support the Arboretum in any other way, as Hannah was mentioning earlier, please visit the Fullerton Arboretum website, click on the donate button, and you can decide any way that you want to support the Arboretum, and we're all grateful for your support. We thank you for joining us here today, and we hope to see you soon in the real Arboretum. Have a great Earth Day. Thanks.